Hello dear friends, we continue our educational videos on the basics of drawing, and today we'll talk about another way to depict the illusion of space and volume on a flat surface. In one of our lessons, we already touched on this topic specifically in the lesson about shading. If you haven't seen it, be sure to check it out. So, in that lesson, I talked about a concept known as perspective. Today, we'll delve a bit deeper into it, explore the theory, and I'll demonstrate how to apply this knowledge in practice. Let's start by acknowledging that our eyes perceive surrounding objects slightly distorted, not as they actually are. For example, the farther an object is from us, the smaller it appears to us. Take a look at a photo. Two people of roughly the same height, but the one farther from us seems smaller. Another peculiarity. You're probably familiar with how a railroad looks, with rails and sleepers approximately equidistant from each other. However, if you look at the track from a different angle, as if into the distance, our eyes see a completely different picture, making it seem like the rails converge into a single point in the distance. Ancient artists also noticed these aspects of our vision, and based on these observations, devised rules for depicting volumetric three-dimensional objects on a flat surface, and in general, creating the illusion of space on that surface. Over time, these rules formed the concept of perspective. Currently, perspective is an entire section in descriptive geometry. In this lesson, we won't delve into the intricacies of geometry. We'll only discuss the most important aspects relevant to drawing. I should clarify that today we'll specifically talk about linear perspective, the perspective associated with geometry. If someone didn't know, perspectives come in various types, such as aerial perspective, spherical, axonometric, and observational perspective. By the way, you all use observational perspective when you draw, often without realizing it. Observational perspective is essentially your eye's estimation. Many people can draw quite well relying on it, even without knowing the basics of linear perspective. However, if you want to not only mindlessly copy, but also understand what you're doing to be able to draw independently, then knowledge of linear perspective is essential. Let's explore it together. We've established that perspective helps us depict objects in accordance with our visual perception, specifically aiding in accurately representing the dimensions of various objects on a flat surface, based on their placement and distance. This allows us to convey space and volume correctly. Now, let's understand how it works. The foundation of perspective lies in straight lines that, under certain rules of convergence, indicate the sizes of objects as they recede from our view. Hence the name of this perspective, linear. Also crucial to perspective are concepts such as our line of sight and vanishing point. To make it clearer, let's go through some simple examples. Let's start with the eye level. It's an imaginary line corresponding to the level of our gaze, or the height at which our gaze is situated. You can visually identify this line by looking into the distance and observing the horizon. In principle, the line of sight and the horizon are the same, although there are exceptions. The eye level can change. If you sit down, it will lower slightly, increasing the area above eye level and decreasing the area below. If we go up in an airplane or ascend somewhere high, it will be the opposite. Now, regarding the vanishing point, it is a point located on the horizon line or eye level, respectively. Parallel lines that tend toward the horizon converge at this point. A good example is the railroad example we discussed at the beginning of the lesson. Not only real lines can converge to the vanishing point, but also imaginary lines that extend the lines of an object. A good illustration is a street. We see several buildings, and a building does not reach the vanishing point, but we can draw imaginary lines extending the roof and foundation lines. These lines will converge at the vanishing point on the horizon. If you learn to find the vanishing point and draw imaginary lines converging to it, you will be able to accurately gauge the sizes of objects as they recede and faithfully convey the distortions of objects in perspective, as well as depict three-dimensionality. I'll demonstrate how to do this in practice shortly, but first, let me tell you about a few more important points. We looked at examples in photos where the vanishing point is in the center of our field of view, as in this case. However, it often happens that this point can shift to the left or right. Here's an example. Another real-life example you see on the screen right now. Everything we discussed so far was examples of one-point perspective, where we have one vanishing point. But in life, Situations with multiple vanishing points are much more common. First, let's consider the case with two vanishing points, or two-point perspective. A good example of two-point perspective is this rectangle facing us on one of its sides. A real-life example could be a building turned sideways to us. In this case, two surfaces converge at different points. If you have several geometric figures and they are turned towards you differently, there won't be two vanishing points, but several, making it not two-point, but multi-point perspective. You can see an example of this perspective in real life on the screen right now. So far, that's all you, as a beginner artist, need to know about linear perspective. Now, let's move on to practice. I'll show you how to draw simple geometric shapes, various perspective options, and, in the end, create a small sketch. It will be a mini drawing of perspective. Let's start with one-point perspective. Let's draw a cube. We'll begin by marking the horizon line and the vanishing point. Our vanishing point will be in the center of our field of view, above the cube. This is the simplest option we can think of. Now let's sketch the constructive beginning of the cube, a square. Connect all the corners of the square to the vanishing point. The next step is to turn the square into a cube. For this, we need to find its back face. It's crucial to do this correctly, because drawing it too close or too far will result in a distortion of depth in the drawing. We can either estimate this line visually or use the following simple method. We need to inscribe a small square in these points by eye. After drawing the square, we have the back face of the cube, and all that remains is to complete the cube by connecting these points. In the end, we have created a cube like this. Let's consider another variation of one-point linear perspective, where the object is offset from the vanishing point. Similarly, let's draw a cube, starting with a square. Draw lines to the vanishing point. And find the back faces of the cube. I'll do it by eye this time. Erase any unnecessary lines. And the cube is ready. This is a simple example of how you can apply the knowledge you've gained in practice. Now, I'll show you how to construct a cube in two-point perspective. But before that, I'll explain how to draw rounded objects in perspective, such as a circle and a cylinder. It's probably not a secret for anyone that when you look at a circle from an angle, it distorts into an ellipse. To draw a similar ellipse, we simply inscribe it into a square or rectangle drawn in perspective. So, we draw a square first. Diagonally to find the center of the circle. Add two additional lines. And sketch the ellipse by eye. Knowing this technique, it's easy to figure out how to construct a cylinder or cone in perspective. First, we build a cube or rectangle. Now we need to draw two ellipses, one at the top and one at the bottom of the cube. Erase all auxiliary lines, and our cylinder is ready. Okay, now I'll show you how to draw a rectangle in two-point perspective. First, I'll mark the horizon line or eye level. Call it whatever you like. By the way, I intentionally drew it this long. You'll see why later. Now, I'll draw the face of the rectangle that will be closest to us. I chose a common scenario where shapes like rectangles are approximately at eye level. These could be buildings on the street or furniture in our homes. Now, a very crucial moment. It's quite subtle, but you need to understand it. I mark two vanishing points. The closer they are to each other, the closer the object, our rectangle, will be to us. The farther these points are, the closer it will be to the horizon line, farther from us. It's essential to feel this to avoid distortions in your drawings. Alright, now I draw lines to the vanishing points to outline the top sides of the rectangle. And I draw vertical lines. Our rectangle is ready. But for your general knowledge, I'll show you how to draw the faces on the opposite side of our rectangle. It's elementary. Well, friends, we've practically examined some methods of constructing perspective. Now, for entertainment, I'll create a small drawing, a perspective sketch. I'll draw the same railroad from the beginning of the lesson, using one-point perspective without an offset vanishing point, like here. I invite you to watch this process and try to relate what's happening on the screen to what I explained today. This is what the drawing turned out to be. It's just a sketch, a quick hand-drawn draft, so please don't judge it too harshly. To conclude this lesson, I want to give you one piece of advice. Despite the detailed exploration of various perspective construction methods today, it doesn't mean you should apply such constructions to every drawing. Remember that besides linear perspective, there's also observational perspective, for instance, and they should work together, complement each other. I would even say that observational perspective should take priority. Well, friends, if you enjoyed this lesson and generally like the format of educational tutorials on our channel, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Let's see how many likes this video gets. And I'm curious to know how interesting this series, the format of such old video tutorials, is for you. If you're new to the channel, I recommend checking out the videos you see on the screen now. You'll find many interesting and useful things. Our lesson is coming to an end. I wish everyone luck, success, and see you in new videos. Goodbye.